Racing Mars closes out this week's look at Babylon 5, and it starts with the point that I raised back on Tuesday, about them starting to run out of things that only come from Earth or worlds otherwise under Clark's thumb. Ivanova points out the only option they have, the black market. She's ready and willing to do it if Sheridan approves, which of course he does. What he doesn't is her firing him, at least for the day. She tells Sheridan he hasn't taken any personal time off, and he needs to have it. For crying out loud, he was still on the clock during the Zahadum fiasco, and he spent most of that time dead. Meanwhile, Marcus and Dr. Franklin are killing time on the final leg of their journey to Mars. Mostly it's driving Franklin up the wall. Not easy on a ship with rotational gravity. But the fun is interrupted when Marcus finds a spy, although not the kind that you expect. He seems like the future equivalent of a train-hopping hobo. His name is Captain Jack, not to be confused with either Captain Jack or Captain Jack. This is the OG Captain Jack. His brother actually runs this ship, though. Right now, he's not captaining anybody. In fact, Marcus doesn't even want to be near him. Clearly, he does not trust him, even when, in comparison to their meal bars, he has bags of meals that self-heat upon opening and offers to share them. Marcus has to hold Franklin back, and even then, only barely. He's had weeks of nothing but bad food and Marcus annoying him. It's a testament to his oath as a doctor that he didn't kill Marcus and eat the body. Let's see if Sheridan's having any fun on his day off.
Unavailable due to jamming. Movie channel unavailable due to jamming. Sports channel unavailable due to jamming. Adult channel unavailable due to jamming.
Oh, that stings. All that leaves is Pak Mara porn, and that really is less of an erotic adventure and more like a boner trying to climb Mount Everest. Sheridan decides to watch the only thing that's coming through on ISN because he's a glutton for punishment. It replays what Garibaldi had said, and Sheridan decides to compound this bad situation by going to speak to Garibaldi about him undermining his authority, giving credibility to Clark's propaganda. He does at one point inquire if he's upset Garibaldi in some way, but in the overall context, that statement is more like, if I did something to you, don't destroy the cause over it. Things get uglier, and Sheridan finally says that if Garibaldi doesn't learn to stop undermining him in public, things will get difficult for him on this station. Garibaldi will not be intimidated, and Sheridan loses his temper. All in all, I'd say even the Pak Mara porn might have been a better choice. Speaking of things hard to swallow, Franklin's lunch. Marcus tries to assuage his grumbling until finally, Captain Jack gives the passphrase to indicate the contact in the Martian resistance. Turns out he just wanted to scope them out first, make sure everything was on the up and up. You find all kinds down here. He hands over the fake IDs that they'll use going forward to protect themselves.
A young married couple on holiday to Mars for their honeymoon.
Look, the mission is fine, but if it was me, I would never go along with that. The only place I honeymoon is in Hawaii, damn it. Back on the station, Garibaldi's dust-up with Sheridan drew some attention. These guys have the stink of night watch all over them. But they're here to say what Sheridan is doing is hurting everybody, and he needs to be stopped. Well, whatever Garibaldi's problem is with Sheridan, he's not going to sell him out to these assholes. He may no longer have his home world, his job, his quarters, or his hair, but he has his principles. Meanwhile on Mars, Captain Jack shares some of the stories about B5. One being that they'd show up with an alien fleet, and the other that they'd just abandoned Mars.
We just haven't had a chance to do anything about it till now, what with the war and all.
Right, well. What war?
Oh, yeah, ISN probably hasn't been talking about the forces of darkness rising up to crush the weak or the Vorlon fleet wiping out entire planets. Remember, there's making the public afraid of aliens and making the public convinced that aliens could nakedly destroy them all like the Minbari did. You want them falling into line because you think the government can save them, not show them a threat that Earth Force has no more chance of stopping than a turtle stopping a car.
Who won? We did. We all did.
Ah, yes, well. Good for us.
Just my luck. First time in my life I'm a war hero and nobody knows about it.
Good luck. Your only chance of getting laid now is relying on your striking good looks or heart-melting voice. Poor bastard. Back on B5, Ivanova is having a hush-hush meeting with 4 black marketeers, one of them having a bit of a grudge since she personally broke his arm. But they saw even that as just price of doing business. But Clark's embargo has strict sentences for those who try to break it, way higher than what it's worth to try. Besides which, no one wants dust, and everyone who wants a weapon can get one thanks to the war. There's no point in risking everything to try to sell something to people that they aren't interested in buying. So Ivanova makes clear there are other things that Babylon 5 will buy, and in addition, be able to help them out with fighter escorts, provide fuel, maintenance, and, pimp your ride and all that. They'll make money, not enough to get rich, but with little risk of ever getting caught, or beaten up, or shot by Ivanova, although where she stands on airlocks remains an open question.
You seen anybody, Ivanova?
Detailing ways to smuggle in ship parts is the best way to get his engine going. Meanwhile on Mars, Captain Jack leads them through the old mining tunnels until the Resistance gives the traditional greeting of drawn guns. Seems they got word their leader was in danger of an assassin from off-world.
Can we talk to somebody in charge?
That'd be me. I'm number 2 around here.
But can we talk to number 1?
You'll have to get in line after Patrick McGowan. Under the circumstances, he's inclined to err on the side of shoot them, but since that's not a way to win friends, he's going to give them a chance to turn over their real identity cards so they can check in with B5 to confirm their story. So Captain Jack collects them and hands them over, and while we wait for the results, let's check in on Sheridan and Delenn. He's beating himself up over how he acted, but Delenn puts his mind at ease by changing the subject. The next ritual in this ridiculous courtship.
Well, how many more of these rituals are there?
Depending on the length of time we take before fully committing to one another, which clan is in dominance at the time, the types and amounts of offerings made at temple.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
As many as, 47? No. 50.
I honestly thought she was telling a joke there, but she's serious. It's a wonder that they stopped performing rituals long enough to try and exterminate us. Though then again, the last person you want waging war on you is an obsessive compulsive with a death ray. Wash my hands, vaporize the station. Wash my hands, vaporize that moon. Wash my hands. Well, still, this latest ritual isn't so bad. They spend a night together finding each other's erogenous zones. So a ritual there is probably fine, so long as it doesn't mean calling out your parents' names at some point. On Mars, Franklin is annoyed that on top of everything else, it's sweltering in here. He's sweating like a pig on a planet that's average temperature is minus 85. That means conditions must be pretty bad, or you need to drop a few pounds. Captain Jack passes the time pulling out a picture of his adult daughter to show Franklin and to discuss how much she means to him, and with her address on the back. Must be why he didn't show Marcus. He has "lock up your daughter" written all over him. If he wasn't already married, of course. Well, bad news for Marcus and Franklin. Turns out they're imposters. Boy, you're always the last to find out, am I right? Number 1 shows up, intent on seeing them herself, except Captain Jack starts struggling with a gun, as in a gun that he is currently holding. He'd been anxious to meet with her earlier, and he had this to give her. Marcus grabs another gun off a guard and shoots his shoulder while Franklin tackles number 1 to safety. Only it seems that Captain Jack has one of those shoulder critters because it hops off and runs off after getting blasted. Well, it turns out that being shot was the best day it could have happened to him. Yeah, I've had days like that too. Franklin starts dissecting the remains of the critter while number 2 shows up with the real identicards. Captain Jack must have switched them. Or rather, the creature did so while controlling Captain Jack. Franklin notes that he kept doing things slightly wrong, like he was trying to let them know that something was up within the bounds of what the creature would let him do. But nobody jumped to the conclusion that he was a helpless pawn of a brain parasite. Bet they're kicking themselves over that one. They call up Captain Jack to tell him that it's all right, they know what happened, and since nobody got hurt, there's nothing to be upset about. But he explains that they found him, came in the middle of the night, and put that on him. And now he is a prisoner to it. Even after everything that's happened, the parasite's just going to grow back again. The only thing that he can do is cash out with that thermite grenade he swiped on his way out. Well, that's going to make the commute a little harder tomorrow. Back on B5, Sheridan goes to Garibaldi again, having had time to reflect and trying really hard this time. But some woman interrupts to treat Sheridan like the Messiah, to Sheridan's discomfort and Garibaldi's annoyance. Now, up until now, Garibaldi's behavior has been still within the realm of reasonable for what he says about Sheridan. Now, obviously, we know that he's under some influence. But the point is, he's acting consistent with what his stated opinions are. But his response to her soon gets all out of proportion. And when Sheridan finally has to intervene because Garibaldi is borderline roughing her up, Garibaldi decks him. Even he manages to look a little sheepish after he threw that punch. But what comes across more is that Garibaldi's upset that he allowed himself to, get that upset, to actually use a fist, but that this only has confirmed his view of Sheridan, that the man has a god complex. I mean, next thing you know, he's going to be bringing robed religious figures to attend to him during sex.
Len, you wouldn't believe the kind of day
Yes?
Picture them all, watching and chanting while Sheridan is trying to perform. And now throw into that mental picture James Brown's preacher in the Blues Brothers. Now put a finger in that ass. Put it in there in Valen's name. On Mars, it's going to take a little while for the resistance leaders to gather, so number one is taking Franklin out to dinner. He did leap to defend her, after all. He's a pretty great guy all around, even if he might be a little smelly at the moment. But Garibaldi, he's convinced that Sheridan is the one that has gone too far now, and something has to be done about him. Garibaldi agrees to help these guys, but only to help Sheridan. Yeah, they'll help him all right into a cell. Racing Mars is on the cusp, but I'm rounding it up to very important because it begins the actions on Mars, shows the point when Garibaldi has definitely slipped, planted the seed for the start of the next act of Season 4, and perhaps subtly but nevertheless significantly, given us a major revelation about Clark. Up until now, it was safe to assume that essentially he had been helped the way that Londo had, with the victories that he needed and the means to surround himself with those that would bring him absolute power. But that he has, by and large, been keeping out of the larger events in the galaxy. After all, the question is, what do you want? It was undoubtedly to be the unquestioned ruler of humanity, not building a grand empire like Londo had wished for. It's smaller ambitions, but ambitions that aligned with the overall goals of the Shadows, and thus were indulged, perhaps with the belief that in time he could then turn humanity into a useful tool on the galactic stage. My point being, the fact that Captain Jack had one of those shoulder parasites means that the minions of the Shadows have aligned with Clark. They've taken action that directly advances his cause. So we're not just dealing with a treacherous dictator like we thought. I give this a stamp of recommended. Even though it's going to make you uncomfortable at times, you get the great Marcus Franklin double act, the tension with Sheridan and Garibaldi, and you get Lanier going,
Woo-hoo.